Welcome. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar. This webinar is part of the Unpacking Coaching webinar series presented by the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. My name is Mary Louise Hemmeter, and I'm going to be your host today. The topic for our webinar today is delivering practice-based coaching using a group coaching format. We're really excited about sharing this information with you today. When we talk about resources on the webinar today, those resources will be available to download under the related resources section on the webpage for this webinar. So today we have three amazing panelists. I'm so excited for y'all to hear from them. And I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves. Sarah Basler, you want to start?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sarah Basler, and I'm an educational consultant at Vanderbilt University, and I work across several grants and projects in the Hemmeter Lab. And I was a coach on the group coaching approach project, and I've been a coach to teachers, and I've also coached coaches. And I'm excited to tell you more about this format of coaching. And now I'm going to turn it over to two teachers that I had the pleasure of coaching for this project. Haley, would you like to start?
Sure. Hello, my name is Haley Monday. I actually just transitioned into a staff development coach position for Mid-Cumberland Head Start. So previously I spent 3 years as an early Head Start teacher, and I got the pleasure of participating in the group coaching with Sarah.
I guess it's my turn now, Haley. Hi, I am Sarah Goad, and I am currently a pre-K teacher for Mid-Cumberland Head Start. I have been with them for 6.5 years now, and I had the pleasure of working with Sarah as well with the group coaching project.
All right. So for our time together today, I'm going to give an overview of the group coaching approach project. I'm going to talk to you about why you might consider using a group coaching format, and then we're going to get Sarah and Haley to provide their perspective of the project. All right. So in the research around practice-based coaching, there's typically 16 weeks of on-site individual coaching. In this study, we had 16 sessions, but we wanted to, we know that PBC is proven effective for helping improve and enhance teacher practice, but we know that individual coaching can be very resource and time intensive. So we wanted to develop and test a model that combines what we know is effective about individual coaching and apply it in a group context. So in our research, we typically have 16 weeks of on-site individual coaching. And in this study, we still had 16 coaching sessions, but we modified the delivery to be 8 individualized distance coaching sessions and 8 group coaching sessions. So group coaching sessions provided the opportunities for teachers to really learn about pyramid model practices. We gave them the opportunity to plan, to implement certain practices. They got to share videos and reflect and give each other feedback around the practices. For today, we're really going to focus mainly on the group coaching side. All right. So as I mentioned before, there were 8 individual sessions and 8 group coaching sessions. So we want to talk about a little bit about why you would consider using a group coaching approach. As I mentioned previously, coaching individually can be very resource and time intensive. So if you, for instance, if you had 8 teachers that on your caseload and you were going to coach them individually, if you were to spend about an hour observing, you might spend 30 minutes prepping or getting resources ready to share with that teacher. And then you might spend 30 minutes in that meeting with the teacher for reflection and feedback. And that would total up about 2 hours per teacher. And if you had 8 teachers, that would be about 16 hours for just one cycle with each teacher. If you had 8 individual cycles with those 8 teachers, it could add up to close to 128 hours. So if you were to coach those 8 teachers in a group, and let's just say you spend about an hour preparing for group and then an hour hosting the group, that would be about 2 hours per group. And if there's 8 group meetings, that's only 16 hours of your time. So you can see that group coaching is a less resource intensive way to deliver PDC. It can be conducted live or virtually. So when we first started the study, the group meetings were hosted at a central locations where all the teachers would come and meet. We served them a snack. We gave them any materials that they needed to help them engage in the meetings, and they went really well. But once the pandemic hit, we had to shift those meetings to be conducted virtually. And when we did this, we were a little worried about whether teachers were going to stay engaged and how they would go. But we found that even with the shift in the delivery to distance or to virtually, that teachers were really still engaged and they continued to participate. And over the course of the 2-year study, we had really high levels of engagement and attendance throughout, whether it was live or virtual. So because meetings can be conducted live or virtually, if your program is at a distance or traveling is an issue, you can adjust it to meet the needs of your group or your program. So that's another benefit. And another reason to consider a group format is that teachers really enjoyed the group coaching. Every other group session, we would send out evaluations and then the teachers would respond. And we would ask about the delivery and their satisfaction. And we received lots of positive feedback. And when we asked on the survey what part of the group meeting was the most helpful, here's what some of the teachers said. That meetings as a team and sharing experiences and implementing strategies was one of their favorite parts. Watching videos from other teachers and seeing how they handle situations and new things. And I enjoy being able to talk to one another in a non-judgmental environment. It's nice hearing others' ideas, and it gives me new ideas and thoughts. So they really enjoyed the group coaching approach. And then the focus of our groups, the pyramid model practices that we selected for our group coaching were friendship skills, emotional literacy, self-regulation and anger management, and problem solving. There were 2 groups focused on each skill. So for each set of skills, there were 2 groups. The focus of group could really be any set of evidence-based practices. And you would typically, a program would assess the needs of your staff and teachers to determine what practices it is that you'd want to focus coaching on. But for this project, we focused on these skills. So each time we met, we really tried to follow the same format to have some predictability. During week 1, we shared example practice videos that really showed the practices that we were focusing on. And in week 2, we would give the teachers a chance to share their videos. In the summer before coaching began, we did a pyramid model training, and at the end of the training, the teachers got to sign up for which group that they would like to share. So if they wanted to share a friendship video, they would sign up for that. And we usually would have 2 teachers for each group share. And you can see that we really tried to adhere to these times. So you might be thinking like, why is there 10 minutes just dedicated to opening the meeting? Well, we really wanted to give teachers time to, one, we provided snacks. So we wanted them to have a chance to get their food, come in, get settled, say hi to a friend, and also coming from their site to the meeting. We knew that there was going to be, some people that might be late. So we built in that time as a buffer in the beginning. And we only spent 10 minutes sharing the content. And that was because we found that the meat of the meeting, we wanted to spend looking at examples or watching videos and giving feedback. So we really slimmed down what it was that we were sharing, and we tried to stick to that 10 minutes. And also, we wanted the meeting to be more about them talking and getting sharing their feedback. So that's why we spent 10 minutes there. The majority was spent on the video sharing and the reflection and feedback. We always tried to leave at least 10 minutes to action plan. And then we would close up and leave, 5 minutes to kind of talk about next steps. So the individual coaching, the 8 individual coaching sessions occurred between each group meeting. And each group meeting was staggered about 3 weeks apart. Each teacher would receive 1 individual coaching session between each group. And teachers assessed their needs using the pyramid model practices implementation checklist, and that can be found in the accompanying resources for this webinar. Coaches used those checklists that teachers filled out and the baseline teapot scores to get and initial observations to kind of get an idea of where each teacher was in their pyramid model implementation. And teachers and the coach would set goals based on those data and what the teachers identified that they wanted to work on. But goals ranged from any item on the teapot, any practice, but mostly we're focused on the foundational skills like schedules, routines, transitions, behavior expectations. Individual sessions were conducted at a distance. So teachers would video themselves implementing the practices set in their action plans, and then would upload those to Coaching Companion. And then I would watch the video, and then we would meet via Zoom. And we had 2 of the individual coaching sessions that were actually on site or live so that we could get a good idea of teaching styles and kind of what the environment looked like. And we tried to space those out so that, we went once in the beginning and then towards the middle or the end of coaching.
Hey, Sarah.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt 1 second because we have a question that it seems like maybe is timely right now. I'm going to answer it, so it'll give you a minute of a break. But we have a question about someone is asking how the group coaching approach is different or the same as TLCs, which are another kind of group coaching that a lot of Head Start programs use. And I'm going to just real briefly say what the differences are for those of y'all who know the other model. I think it's similar in a lot of ways. I think a big difference is that our goal was to do individual coaching between each group session, whereas in TLCs, they try to get to every teacher at one point during the group. So teachers aren't getting much individual coaching. Of course, ours was focused on, or GCA group coaching approach was focused on pyramid model practices and the content varied from week to week. And then I would say the other thing is that we just wanted to be sure that the way that we ran the groups mapped onto the PBC process. So it's not different than PBC. The group coaching isn't. It's just PBC delivered to a group of teachers. And so we really tried to adhere to that as well. All right, Sarah.
And then I just noticed one other question, and it said, did you do individual coaching with all participants in the group, and were the goals different from the ones created? And they were. Like, the group goals were focused on those set of skills, friendship skills, emotional literacy, self-regulation and anger management, and problem solving. And individual goals were based on whatever pyramid practice that the teacher wanted to work on. Okay. So as I mentioned before, we utilized Coaching Companion for this project, and we utilized it for both group and individual coaching. Teachers in Coaching Companion would upload their focused observation videos, and then coaches provided their teachers with feedback and resources. We used a custom version of Coaching Companion, but there is a free version available through Head Start. And so for individual goals, the coaching partnership was just between the coach and the teacher. But for group goals, the partnership was with all the members of the group. So we would set an action plan based on the focus of that group. So for friendship, we would have a goal. And there, the teachers that signed up to share their video for those skills would upload to Coaching Companion. And as I mentioned, most of the individuals coaching was already delivered through Zoom, like we would meet through Zoom. But once the pandemic hit, we eventually shifted everything to be conducted via Zoom as well. So this is an example. Well, these are actually the objectives for our friendship group 1. And so each topic had 2 group meetings. So for the first friendship meeting, we shared information about friendship skills. We provided materials to teachers to help them implement new strategies in their classroom. And we had them identify what they wanted to try in their classroom, make a plan, and then they would video themselves implementing the practice for their own reflection. And the videos for group 1 were just example videos. So we would do reflection and feedback, but the first group of each skill were examples. So this is what the group 2 would look like. So we reviewed content. So we wouldn't share, we still devoted 10 minutes to content, but the focus of group 2 was more around checking in with teachers on their implementation and seeing how they use those practices in their classroom. And then whenever we would go to the videos, that was videos of the teachers. So if they signed up to share for that week, they would share. Teachers were given an opportunity to provide some reflection around their implementation. And then we allowed the teachers to provide some feedback, some supportive and constructive feedback. And when it was time to write a plan, we would really, the focus shifted then to all day, every day. So we really tried to have them think about how they were going to embed the skill across the day or add in new skills. So really expanding it.
Hey, Sarah, can you, someone wants to know what, Siri thought I was talking to her again, but someone wants to know what kind of materials we provided for when we were talking about friendship skills?
Yeah, so actually in the next slide,
Okay.
yeah,
So-
so we used a lot of NCPMI resources, but here's an example of what we provided for friendship. So it was different and tailored for each group, but for the first meeting of each social emotional skill, we provided teachers with materials that would help them implement these practices. And you see here, this is what we provided teachers for the friendship skills group. They received 2 books on friendship. We provided them finger puppets so that they could role play. We also made them a friendship kit, and we actually got that idea from Head Start Center for Inclusion. And we made the kits, and they could use those in their class to teach children what they could do to help a friend if they were upset or sad or hurt. And we usually always provided some sort of article or something to kind of give them more information. We used the Circle Time magazine a lot. I know we definitely used it for friendship skills and emotional literacy. And I think maybe even problem solving. And each meeting, we always tried to, or each material, we would send home a family resource. So we would print enough copies for them to give to their, like a classroom set, so they could send them home if they wanted. And we always talked about how to connect with families, and talked about ways that they could do that, even outside of just sending stuff home, whether it be through resources that they share or classroom displays. So what you see here are the reflection questions that we developed for each group. So at the top, you can see the bulleted list are the practices related to the skills that we were focused on. And then this would help to kind of focus teachers in on what practices they were looking for when we were watching the videos. And then below, you could see we wanted to make sure that teachers had questions that could really prompt them to think about what it was that they were seeing in the video and reflect about it, and really think about if the practices were successful. We wanted them to think about what it was that the teacher was doing, how the children were responding, and then think about ways to that they might adjust or enhance the practice. And we had them think about if they might try something like what they were seeing in their classroom. So if what they saw in the video was something that they might try. And then we noticed as time went on, teachers' skills in providing that supportive and constructive feedback really grew. And so you can see, if you click, the questions for the first meeting were different than the teacher example videos. So let's see, let's zoom in on the questions. So since week 1's videos were examples, the questions were a bit different. These video questions were really focused, you can see right here, on what they saw and how they might try that out. And if you go to week 2, you can see that the questions changed to really focus on getting the teacher to reflect. So you can see in bold, it says, before the video starts, we asked a question to get them to kind of set the stage and the context for what it was we were about to view. And then after we had reviewed the video, we would ask the teacher to kind of reflect on what they thought about their video and how it felt. And then we would give the group an opportunity to really provide some of that supportive and constructive feedback.
Hey, Sarah, I'm going to jump in again. Hope you don't mind. Couple of questions. Yes, you'll have access to all of these materials. People are having a hard time seeing them. They'll be on the web page when we finish or after the webinar when the recording goes up. And then people are asking about how many teachers were in a group. And our goal was to never have more than 8. I think we really wanted to have somewhere between 6 and 8, but because we were doing this in 3 different programs and they had different needs, we would sometimes have as few as 3 or 4 teachers in a group. And when we went virtual, we had as many as 10 in a group. But the way that Sarah was describing the structure of teachers sharing, somebody sharing every other week, it's really hard to get all those videos in 8 sessions if you have more than 8 teachers. So our goal was to have 8 or fewer.
Yeah. Exactly. It got kind of tricky if we had more than that because time was already really tight. Okay, so for action planning, we always wanted to set aside time for teachers to write goals about the practices that they wanted to work on. We wanted them to really think about the practice that they wanted to try, when they were going to try them, what activity they were going to try it in, and the kind of group size that they were going to try it out in. And then the space below were like implementation notes that they could kind of write out the procedure for trying it out, or the steps they might do to implement in their class. And then they would try the practice out in their classroom. And then the back page of the action plan were some questions for self-reflection. So we would send teachers on from the meeting with their plan. The goal was that they would try it in their class, they would video themselves, and then even if they weren't sharing a video, we would want them to at least video and self-reflect. And then we have also shared these action plans on challengingbehavior.org, and it's the plan, do, reflect form. There's an A session and a B form. A refers to the first meeting and B refers to the second meeting. And let's see. Oh, so we noticed that when the first group was kind of difficult to have teachers really come up with practices that they wanted to try. So we shifted and we created some sample action plans so that we could give teachers ideas for what to try. And often we used we created the plans or the sample plans around using materials that we provided them during groups. So if we provided a friendship kit, we might have a sample action plan on implementing the friendship kit or teaching the friendship kit in your class. Teachers were not required to use the samples, but we found that they were really helpful just to kind of give them ideas. And as time went on, teachers didn't really need them as much, but there in the beginning, it was good to have to kind of give them ideas. And then we would find that sometimes teachers would tweak the samples to kind of fit what would happen maybe in their class. And what we found was that it really maximized the efficiency of group and helped everyone leave with a plan, because we only had 10 minutes for action planning, and action planning can be tricky to do just in general, and then to only have 10 minutes, that makes it even trickier. So we shifted to provide those samples. So as I mentioned, the action plans for the second week, look different. And that's because in week 1, we really wanted teachers to think about a practice that they wanted to try. And then in week 2, we really wanted them to think about, how can I expand this? So we provided a little activity matrix. So if they were working on embedding friendship skills, we wanted teachers to really think about, well, how can I embed friendship skills across my day? Can I do it at arrival? Can I do it at centers at different times? So we really wanted to focus on the all day, every day with this plan. And then of course, the backside of the reflection the backside of the plan was self-reflection. So we would ask that they would video themselves and self-reflect. All right. So some things that we would suggest for having a successful group is that pacing and timing of the facilitator of the group is really, really important. 60 minutes was a challenge. I feel like if we had an hour and a half, that would have been the best, but it's hard to dedicate that much time. So with a group of 5 to 8 participants, it can be really tricky to balance getting teachers to participate, but also being able to get through all the items on the agenda. And you really want to allow time for teachers to connect and share their thoughts and reflect and give feedback. So it was really important that we try to adhere to the times. We tried offering opportunities for members of the group to speed share. So when we would open the meeting, we wanted to get members talking, but we kind of set parameters around it. So we had a little icon that said speed share, and then some other tips that we would use. We would say things like, okay, I'm looking for 2 teachers to share, so that we could give opportunity to share out. But with a group that size, it wouldn't always be feasible to have everyone share. And it's really important that teachers get to watch the videos, do the reflection and feedback, and have time to plan. If they didn't get to the plan, then they wouldn't have a practice to try in their classroom, or something to work on between sessions. So we always wanted to make sure we had time for that. In the first session, we developed group norms. And we found that to be helpful to really set the expectation of group and really help set it up as a safe place for the teachers. And we had our teachers let us know what they wanted to get out of group, what they expected from the other members of the group. And each meeting, we would review these norms as a part of the opening. And then another thing is whether you are implementing a group virtually or in person, you always want to make sure that you give the participants the things that they needed to participate. So that for our sessions, we always made sure we had PowerPoint handouts so that they could jot down notes. We would send out those reflection and feedback questions with the practices at the top, and we would always have an action plan. And then when we were in person, we always had copies of those. If we were meeting virtually, we would send those in an email before the group, so that they had time to print them out before group happened, or open them and get them ready to type into if they wanted to. And then last but certainly not least, in order for this to really be PBC, we really wanted to adhere to PBC coaching strategies, but make it fit a group context. So each group, we always had a focus. We watched videos that served as the focused observation. And we always left time for reflection and feedback around those videos, and then either writing an action plan or updating an action plan. So if you're going to use this approach or this format, you want to make sure that you build in those components of the cycle. And it wouldn't be a project if we didn't learn some things. We learned a lot through the process of testing this model. We found, as ML mentioned before, that group size really matters. We had a variety of group sizes ranging from as small as 5 and as large as 10. And it's important that that you have a group that's large enough that if a couple of people miss or are absent, that it doesn't make a huge difference. Because if you had a group of 5 and a couple of people miss, then you can see that that changes the whole experience of the group. And then you also want to be careful of having a group that's too large, because as we mentioned before, if we had 2 teachers sharing videos, it would be hard if we had more than 8 sharing 3 videos. We did it, but it was already tight on time, and it made it a little bit more difficult when there were 3 videos. We had to rush a little bit more. And we wanted everybody to feel able to share their reflection. And when you get a group too large, members might not be as inclined to share their reflection, feedback, or their experiences. So, and it could be hard to manage share outs with a large group. So as we mentioned, a group 5 to 8 is a pretty good balance. And you want to make sure that you provide opportunities to participate. So in a group context, you really have a variety of personalities. And you might have members that want to share but don't really get a chance to, because maybe you have a member that's really sharing out. So you just want to make sure that you give everybody an opportunity. We made it a group norm. We called it step up, step back. So step up and share, but also be aware that there might be other people that want to share. And so you might build that into a group norm. And then another thing that I feel like we're still trying to figure out, but is also something to consider, is that not all people are a good fit for this format. Some teachers might benefit more from an individual coaching. And it's also important to consider the needs, the personalities, and really a teacher's desire to participate in group coaching when you're creating the groups. You wouldn't really want to have someone that's not keen on joining a group in a group, because they might not really participate, and that just kind of makes it hard for the rest of the group. Because we provided coaching as a research study, the teachers were consented. So essentially they wanted to be coached. If you are thinking about piloting this in your program, you might want to gather a group of teachers or coachees that really want to be coached, and test it out that way. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to ML, and we're going to get the teacher's perspective.
Thank you, Sarah. That was great. You could talk forever about the lessons learned, or we could talk forever about the lessons learned. Okay, but we want to give you a chance to hear from our teachers. So I'm going to start with Sarah and ask you to talk about what it was like to be a part of the group. From the teacher's perspective, what was it like to be a part of a group?
Thank you. So it was really an awesome experience. I benefited a lot from the group coaching aspect just because I like to collaborate with other people and get their ideas on things. So it was kind of neat to just be able to sit down with other educators and kind of get their perspective on things. And I never felt like anyone was judging me, like if I made a mistake or anything, or when they watched my video, no one was making fun of me or anything, they gave a lot of great feedback and things like that. So, and I was able to gain a lot of new methods and new strategies to try in my classroom too, because we don't always get to talk to other teachers. We're in the classroom and we're with kids all day. So it was kind of fun.
Sarah, did you know the teachers that were in your group before the group started?
Well, some of them were at my center, so of course I knew them. Others, like Haley, she's at a different center than I am, so I didn't really know her. We've seen each other in trainings and things like that, but it was great to get perspectives from people that I don't see on a regular basis, so.
Great. What did you like most about being in the groups?
Well, I really like seeing other videos.
Mhm.
I chose to go first and sharing my video first,
Brave
so I could get it
soul.
over with. But it was kind of neat to see how others handle different situations and things in their classrooms. And those were, it was a way to see different strategies and say, oh, I can do that in my classroom now too. And just getting the boost from other educators too, just giving you praise and telling you that you're doing a good job, because we don't always get that. So it just, you always left your group sessions feeling good and ready to try new things. So
That's such an interesting thing. It feels like we hear that a lot, that,
Mhm.
that we don't get that much positive feedback, and yet we know how important it is. So I'm really glad to hear you say that. And then my last question for you is, what do you feel like you learned as part of this group coaching approach?
I would have to say not to be afraid to share or to ask questions. And I learned a lot of new strategies in my class, to use in my classroom that I'm still implementing now. And if I didn't understand what someone was trying to explain or how they were doing that strategy, I wasn't afraid to ask them, can you explain it better to me? Or, from their video, like, how did that work in a classroom full of 16 children? And just not being afraid to share. Like I said, I shared my video first, and that was very, very scary for me, but I did it and I felt so good after I finished it. So I think it's just important to know that we're all kind of doing the same thing, and that no one's there to judge you. And that this approach was, I think this was like a really good program to implement. So I feel like I said, I'm using it still today in my classroom. So I think it was a really good program for me. So
I love that. And I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you one more, I think, kind of easy question, or I hope, which is, what happened at the beginning of the groups that made you feel comfortable? Like, I think that's people's biggest fear about group is doing group coaching, is people not feeling comfortable. So what do you think happened that made you feel comfortable?
Well, Sarah talked about setting those group norms and just, making sure that everybody knew that we're all there to help each other. And just like I said, everyone was so positive and so, they just praised you and told you did a good job. And I think that just getting all of that feedback from people just made it so much more comfortable. Sarah did a great job implementing it too, and making us feel welcome in the group session and everything. So it was really great. It was sad when the pandemic hit and we couldn't kind of finish the way we had been going about it. So, but we finished strong. So.
All right, well, thank you. So Haley, I'm going to turn to you for a minute and talk to you a little bit about the individual coaching. So we've been talking about group coaching, but we also did, as part of the group coaching approach, individual coaching. So I'm wondering what about being part of the group coaching approach helped you meet your pyramid model goals?
So being a part of the group really held me accountable to my goals. So it's kind of like having an accountability partner, but more like a group. I knew that they were all working on their goal, and then when we met, they were going to expect, a reflection from me as well. So it kind of held me accountable to whatever I was trying to work on in my classroom. And just that we were all learning together. It didn't feel like something that was like a chore, because we were all kind of doing it together, and it was just something that just became a part of my classroom practices. Like I would tell my co-teacher, oh yeah, don't forget we have to make that video. And it just kind of flowed into our schedule, just because I felt so accountable to all the other teachers that in my group. And teaching is so busy and hard, and we often struggle to find time to reflect or like stop and think. Even when we do try a new practice, we really don't stop and think like, well, how did that go? We're just like, well, it was great or it was terrible, and we just like move on. So the group coaching, I really appreciated the time it gave for us to just like sit down, take a breath, de-stress from the day, and actually reflect on how those practices went in the classroom.
Gosh, that's such a lesson for us in thinking about professional development and how hard it is to be able to reflect in the heat of the moment, right? In the middle of when things are kind of chaotic in the classroom, to really think about whether that worked or didn't work. So that's a really good point. I wanted to ask you what coaching supports you felt were most helpful, and were there differences in the support you got in individual coaching versus group coaching? And are there things that might be easier to do in individual or easier to do in group?
Yes, so the coaching supports I found most helpful were the videos. So that included the pre-recorded videos that we saw at the first meeting, and then also the videos that we each recorded of ourselves. Just because I'm a visual learner, anytime someone explains a practice to me, or a new skill, I'm always getting on YouTube. I need to watch someone else do it first before I feel comfortable doing it myself. So I really liked the videos. And then I also really loved all the materials that I was given. It made it so easy to just go straight back to the classroom the next day and automatically start using them. I didn't have to worry about finding time to make the emotions chart or like the friendship kit or the problem solving cards. They were already there, laminated. Everything was all ready for me to just start using them as soon as possible. So I really liked those supports. So the difference is group coaching, I felt, was like a little bit more broad. You focused more, we all kind of focused on the same goal. Even though we chose like what skill in that goal we wanted to work on, it was a little bit more broad, and we all kind of just made a plan for how we would implement it in the classroom as a whole, not necessarily with one child. With individual coaching, it was just more individualized. I felt more comfortable talking about a specific problem I was having with a specific child, and what goal we could work on with them specifically. So while I was using the group coaching strategies with the whole class, in the individual coaching, we talked more about, okay, how can I help this one child that I noticed is struggling, and what specific strategy can I use to help with him, instead of, whereas group coaching was like, okay, I'm going to do these practices forever, every single day until I see the results. And then if you don't mind, I will address a question that I noticed in the question and answer. Someone
Sure thing.
If we had any experience with like PBIS or anything before. So of course we know about it just because we're teachers and we like to practice conscious discipline, and we're required to have visual schedules and our visual rules and those kinds of things, but we've never really had delved deep into it and how those kind of things affect children's behavior, how it makes them feel more safe in the classroom or helps them follow a routine. We just know that it was required of us, not really the reasons why. So I think that that's where the group coaching and really diving into the pyramid practices helped us. So we had been exposed to the pyramid practices before, but not really the reasons why or how they actually help children or where you can see those benefits based on those practices.
Haley, I really appreciate you saying that, because I think that's something we know. We know how that ongoing, more in-depth coaching is important for people to really be able to use things. And I really appreciate that you said that. So thank you. Thank you. Sarah, I'm actually going to ask you a question because it came from the group, and we just have a minute or two, but can you, one of the participants wants to know, what additional training do you think coaches need in order to do group coaching? So Sarah and our coaches who did the group coaching were very skilled coaches to begin with. So Sarah, what additional training do you think you needed or wish you'd had before you did the group coaching? And then we'll end with that question.
I feel like I learned a lot after just implementing the first one. So maybe like maybe doing a practice run with a group of other coaches or something like that might be helpful. But I think if you're new to PBC in general, you definitely want to have PBC training. Would definitely be a prerequisite. And whatever practices that you're going to use for group, you want to make sure that you have received training in that. Otherwise, you can really if you know PBC and you know the practices, you can really fit it into this format. But I think that if you're new to presenting to a group of people, that maybe you'd want to practice, building your content and really sticking to that time frame, and then just implementing it. It was hard to fit into 60 minutes, but
yeah, I just want to add one thing to that. So I think Sarah's absolutely right, but I think two other things. One is that we had these groups pretty scripted. So we had we had materials developed. They were consistent across groups. We had a protocol. We had a fidelity checklist. I mean, it was really well scripted for the coaches. And the other thing is we had meetings every other week where the coaches who were doing these groups would bring up issues that they were having in the group coaching sessions. And I think in all of our work on coaching, we found that no matter how good our coaches are, they can benefit from that problem-solving discussion with other coaches. So I think it's not just about what training people have, but it's also about providing them ongoing support while they're doing the groups. So anyway, unfortunately, we are out of time. There's many more questions that people have, and we could talk at length about what the issues were and how to address them, but we don't have any more time today. So if you have questions, you can feel free to email Sarah and that we haven't answered. Feel free to email her and she can connect you with whoever can help answer your questions.
Well, thank you so very much to all of our panelists for their wonderful insights. Your feedback is very important to the work that we do. Please remember to provide your feedback on this webinar with our post-webinar survey by typing the web address shown on this slide into your internet browser. Your certificate of attendance will appear once you submit the survey. We invite you to visit our website, challengingbehavior.org, to sign up for our upcoming webinars, access recordings, download pyramid model resources, and more. Thank you to our funder for making this webinar possible. This concludes our webinar. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.